Welcome to The Voice, a platform where knowledge meets experience and every story matters. I am Linda Nifa, your host, and every week we bring you thought leaders, industry experts, and everyday voices with extraordinary stories to educate, inspire, and challenge the way we see the world. Hello, viewers. Today on The Voice, we are honored to have such an exceptional, beautiful, talented guest with us, Architect Litunya Rosemary. Rosemary, it is such an honor to have you here on The Voice. Karibu sana.
Asante, I'm also very honored to be here.
Wow, you are welcome. Just to get to know Rosemary, apart from people knowing you as an architect, who is Rosemary?
Well, Rosemary wears so many hats. I am an architect. I practice architecture for a living. I'm also a lecturer. I am a mentor and a humanitarian. Yes.
That is really amazing. It's good to know. Well, just to dive into what has brought us here today, from experience as an architect, what are the biggest challenges and opportunities that are facing this sector today?
Okay, looking at the construction sector as it is today, there has been a lot of improvements with regards to the exposure of the public towards the knowledge of the kinds of professionals that should be involved in construction projects, as well as what is required in construction projects as compared to a few years back, where most people didn't know what an architect is, what an urban planner is, what an engineer is, and what's the difference between an engineer and a foreman. That is something that has not been mainstream, but right now, this is an opportunity that I would say that is favoring the sector, because now we get better quality structures, and we get better attention to detail, and also we're having more enrollment of students. The performance rates have gone high, so we're having more enrollment of students towards courses like architecture and engineering, and that's an opportunity for us to harness. But also, most importantly, we need to mainstream the roles of professionals in construction contracts, because that is, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest challenge in our sector. When you talk about affordability of buildings, when you talk about integrity of buildings, it all boils down to planning. Sometimes we come up with buildings that are expensive for lack of proper planning and for lack of proper advice. We have opportunities in materials. We have new materials that are coming up. We have a lot for the construction industry that can be harnessed presently. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Speaking about affordability, it's one of the major concerns in housing today. So in your own view, what are the key factors driving high construction cost in Kenya, and how do you compare to other regions with similar economies?
Okay, one of the major factors that is affecting the construction sector today in terms of cost, I would say, is transport. Yeah, transportation cost, and this is an item that we cannot control as a construction industry alone, because it affects all areas of the economy. But for example, let me give you a case in point. The price of 9x6 ton at the quarry is very small, but then the moment you bring in the transport cost, then it shoots up by almost 10 times the original cost. So transportation is a major issue with regards to construction cost, but also the other gap we have that is causing artificial costs in construction, like a building that was supposed to be cheap ending up being expensive, is the gap with okay, let me just say, we have regulated architects, we have regulated quantity surveyors, we have regulated engineers, but we have not regulated the developer. So developers need to show proof of availability of funds before a project commences, because when now you start a project with less funds, it becomes very expensive within the breaks that you have to take because of the lack of financing. And then also it becomes expensive because you buy items in small quantities, and then there's a lot of wastage. And then now you also end up trying to save, in quotes, in areas where there can be no saving, and in the long run you have collapsing of buildings, for example. So I think most of the issues to do with affordability are not with the actual cost of materials, but with the conveyancing maybe and management. Yeah, management, because if a building takes longer to complete because money is coming in small bits, then it becomes expensive. And also when a client does not have enough money, then they compromise on professionals. Okay, so the moment they compromise on professionals, they end up getting people who are unqualified. These people who are unqualified, they are unable to design with the cost in mind, because when you're talking to an architect, they'll tell you how much money do you have, and then you will design a building to suit that cost. So then we do not have structures that are incomplete. Yeah, because a structure that is incomplete, it's like a pool of resources that are held. So it becomes very expensive in a way that the time you're supposed to, for most clients repay loans. Yeah. So if your building stalls for 5 years, that's a very expensive undertaking. But then I would say because you cannot change the cost of a material like the hardware. So the cost of construction is the same for everyone. The taxes are the same for everyone, but the management of construction contracts, that is where the cost implication can be either saved or made worse. Yeah.
Okay, so we get to see that the Kenyan government has launched several initiatives to promote affordable housing, including the Big Four agenda and the current affordable housing project. In your professional opinion, how effective have these policies been, and what gap still needs to be addressed?
The biggest gap we have with, I would call them political projects. The biggest gap we have with political projects is that they are usually knee-jerk reactions. Yeah, they're usually knee-jerk reactions. So, case in point, the affordable housing project. For you to come up with a project of such magnitude, you have to ensure that there are enough services. By services, I mean road networks, sewerage, water supply, electricity supply, garbage collection, energy availability of energy, like electricity and alternative sources of energy like solar. So the biggest gap we have with affordable housing was that you cannot start up. In our training as architects, you start with a master plan, and then now you come up with the individual blocks. So there needed to be a master plan, in quotes, for the affordable housing project, and it's a multi-stakeholder engagement where you involve planners, you involve economists, you involve landscape architects, you involve civil engineers, you involve so many people to ensure that that project does not come to a space and then it cannot function, because now you are changing the population of an area. Yeah, affordable housing projects are very huge, and they are huge populations. So where do you park these people? Yeah, where do you take the sewerage to? How do you get there? Those are issues that need to be sorted out first before you decide how many units you're going to have in a particular area. The other challenge that I talk about a lot with the affordable housing project is that is the lack of thought with regards to return on investment. Case in point, it's happening in all sub-counties, right? So an affordable housing project in Budalangi, if I tell you to sell that unit to me as an investor, you will not be able to sell it to me because I am buying it as an investor, considering that Budalangi does not have the people that will be interested in such buildings because they stay in rural homes and they are comfortable. So coming up with an affordable housing project in Budalangi, you'll have to sell it to an investor. That investor will need you to show them proof of earning, which is not there. Yeah. So if sufficient planning had happened, these affordable housing projects would have been concentrated in the devolution headquarters, in the county headquarters, so that instead of spreading them through every county, you find out where the population suits that kind of development, and then now you place it there. For example, the ones that are being built in Nairobi will serve the population, but the ones that are being built in my village, for example, who's gonna buy that? I wouldn't, because then who do I rent it to? Yeah, so these mega projects usually require a lot of background planning. So you can't just go to a podium and say, now I'm bringing up affordable housing units. Yeah, so you need to involve the stakeholders, you need to involve the experts. Yeah, before you come up with those. Otherwise, you're just holding up taxpayers' money, and they will be derelict with time, especially the ones that are in far-flung counties. Yeah.
Well, that's really so informative. Now, moving to the new construction technologies and innovations that are really gaining popularity in Kenya, let's say like the expanded polystyrene panels. In your own standards and architecture, what are the pros and cons of the EPS in construction?
Okay, EPS panels are a very beautiful way of construction. I've worked with them before on a chapel, the East African School of Aviation chapel. Right now it's already occupied. So having worked with EPS, I think the biggest advantage for EPS is the ease of malleability, I would say, because now when dealing with conventional walls like the brick and mortar walls, if you need to carve a wall to be circular, you need a lot of reinforcement. But with EPS, it's very easy because they are foldable. The other beauty of EPS is the time that is required to fix them, because one panel comes in a large surface, so it requires less time to put up, and it's very effective for complex projects like churches, complex projects like, not really complex, but I would say unconventional projects that come in unconventional shapes. The other beauty of EPS, and also being an expert at environmental design, and even right now I'm working on thesis on acoustics, acoustic comfort, that is comfort with regards to noise in interior spaces. EPS is a very good material in terms of soundproofing. So for a church, I found that to be a very effective material because it locks the noise in, yeah, and it prevents the noise from going out. It also prevents echoes and reverberation because it absorbs the noise. When we look at also thermal comfort in regards to temperature control inside the building, EPS is also a perfect go-to solution because it's an insulator. So now that we are in the tropics, we get a lot of issues to do with heat regulation inside our houses. Either there's too much heat, or if you have a design, there's also too much cold. So with EPS, I find that very effective for our market when you want to regulate heat in the houses. But the setback with EPS is the cost. I know that it has been marketed as as a cost-effective solution. But then also I was doing an extension in Langata, and I got a quotation for EPS and a quotation for the ordinary Darugo stone, and Darugo stone took the day because it was cheaper. Yeah, if you look at the cost of a wall per square meter for EPS, it's higher than the cost of a wall for per square meter for Darugo stone. But then also you could argue that in construction, time is of essence. Yeah. So it's really a give and take. But I would want to use EPS for specialized projects like churches, schools, places that are sensitive to noise and sensitive to heat. Yeah, because then it's an insulator. Yeah, and then also the other perk that comes with EPS is that it's specialized construction technology, and it requires more skilled. Okay, all laborers are skilled, but not many are skilled with EPS, so it gives the developer less in terms of choice even of a contractor, because you have also to work with a contractor that understands what EPS is, given that it's a new material. Now, with regards to sustainability, I wouldn't vouch for EPS a lot, because the carbon emissions that come with manufacturing of EPS panels and manufacturing of those steel expanded polystyrene, anything poly is plastic. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's a sustainable material per se. I know that they market it as sustainable because of the cost of because of the time savings and all, but as a person who is really keen on Mother Nature, I wouldn't really advocate for it, because in the process of manufacturing it, there's a lot of emissions that increases our carbon footprint. So, yeah.
Interesting. We also have container houses, container housing, which are often marketed as quick, sustainable, and cost-effective solutions. In your own view, do you believe that container homes are a viable large-scale solution and for affordable housing, or do they work better as a niche alternative?
I wouldn't go for container housing as a large-scale solution to the housing crisis, because the climate of Kenya, we are on the tropics. We are on the equator, so we get a lot of solar radiation. We get a lot of heat gain in our houses, and I know that container houses have found a way of using insulating membranes inside, but that only works on a small scale, because now if when you're looking at ventilation, the major issue with container housing is ventilation and cooling because of the material. So as a niche material where maybe you're doing cottages, it would work, because then the distance between windows is shorter. Yeah, so it's easy to pass air through and clear out the foul air. It's easy to clear out the hot air, and it's easy to insulate at a small scale. But at a larger scale, that would create a greenhouse effect. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting, because I've really wanted to own one.
As an individual developer, you want a 2-bedroom house, that might work so well for you. But as a large scale, like you want to do, for example, an apartment in containers, I wouldn't advise for that, because you need a lot of mechanical ventilation, and that is true. Not sustainable. It's expensive. Yeah.
Interesting. Moving on to prefabricated concrete panels housing, which is seen as fast and efficient way to build. What should developers and home buyers consider before maybe choosing this method?
Now, what I usually advise my clients when they are comparing different technologies, I'm a bit old school and analog. I would go the Darugo way any time, because I have a big pool of professionals that can handle that. Yeah, and I have a big pool of suppliers that can handle that. But now when you shorten the pool of professionals and you shorten the pool of suppliers, then there comes artificialness in terms of cost. Yeah, because of monopoly. In terms of the construction process, I would say the prefabricated panels are faster. Yeah, and well, the difference between prefabricated and conventional materials is almost the same in terms of cost, but then the prefabricated materials, the prefabricated panels, you complete the house faster. Yeah. And also when they market these panels, they do not put in the transport costs of the material to site. They'll tell you the cost of the panel, the cost of the floor, the cost of the beams, but they will not tell you the cost of transportation, which is a major cost. And then also looking at remedial measures, for example, with the normal stonework, if there is remedial, it's easier, because if it's one course of maybe a certain part is not planned enough, you just remove those few, then you redo. But with a panel, it's huge, and if it breaks also, it's a big loss. But I would say, let's put it like this: the same cement that goes to the mortar is the same cost of cement that they are using on the prefabricated panel. So we cannot change the cost of materials at the hardware. Yeah, what we can change is the amounts that you put in the structure. But cross comparison, I think the cost is the same. The only benefit of the prefabricated panels is the speed. Yeah. And most prefabricated panels, they go and they do it to, well, let me not address that, because I have not confirmed that.
That's okay. You've talked about structural integrity, and we get to see that here in Kenya, we've witnessed building collapsing. So what are the root cause of these incidents?
Okay, maybe we need to start with what are the hotbeds of building collapses, because that is how we will understand where the problem comes from. Having been in the industry for about 9 years now in practice, the hotbeds of collapsing structures are usually in very populated areas like Kiambu, Machakos, Kajiado. Yes, you look at the statistics, most of the buildings are located in these areas that collapse. Now, I have taken time to analyze this, and also when I relate with my clients, I try to understand why buildings collapse. First and foremost, access to financing is the major cause of buildings collapsing. If you ask me why, I will tell you. These areas have natives. Yeah, they have natives who will inherit parcels of land from their grandparents, from their daddies, from their mummies. When you inherit land, sometimes, not always, you do not have the financial muscle to develop this parcel of land. But then there's pressure from the community that the neighbor, this is a prime area. So you decide to do it come what may. So you'll go for the cheapest consultants. You'll try to save in areas of structural integrity where you can't save, because access to financing, as compared to a person who will take a loan and purchase a parcel of land, because in those areas we also have people who purchase parcels of land. These people have access to financing. They can be able to get loans from the bank and proceed and hire the right professionals and have enough financing. When you're working from a place of extensive cost saving, you're bound to make mistakes, and you're bound to be prey to rogue professionals who will masquerade as architects and as engineers, and they'll dangle the fruit of cost saving. That is how you start collapsing. Because when you look at most of the collapsing structures, they almost collapse like, the way when you arrange your chapatis in your dish, yeah. Most of the time you find that it's the legs that the legs here now are the columns. It's the legs that shake, and then the slabs just go and arrange themselves on top of each other. Now, the only way we can control this is to regulate the developer. Yeah, because as an architect, when I come to a site, I need proof of my licensing and registration. As an engineer, I need to prove that I'm registered. As a developer, I need. As a contractor, I go through and see and all these certifications. But these developers have not been regulated. They are free to choose who to work with. And if that is the case, then we shall forever have collapsing buildings, because you can't choose who to work with guided by your pocket. When you're sick, you choose to go to a doctor and you pay the consultation fees, whether you have it or not. Yeah. So that should be the same case in the construction industry, because when we are talking about hire the right professionals, what is the reason why the right professionals are not being hired? Cost. So before a client signs a construction contract, they need to prove availability of funds for that project. Otherwise, it's a project in futility. It's gonna fail. It's gonna be expensive. Or it's gonna collapse, worst case scenario. So we need regulations to ensure that developers can show proof of financing before the project starts, because from my point of an architect and a consultant, I'm an open book. But the clients, they're not open books most of the times. And what is the reason why construction becomes expensive? Disputes with regards to payments. And how do we get disputes with regards to payments? Lack of availability of funds. So that is the giant in the room that needs to be addressed.
That is interesting. Now, speaking about policies and regulations which have been put in place to do away with the occurrence of such incidents, how effective have they been in ensuring structural integrity?
Well, the policies in place are very effective, except the policy that needs to be made in regards to regulating the building, the clients. The policies in place are very effective. My plants usually go through a lot of scrutiny before they can actually go to site. Same applies to engineering drawings. They go through a lot of scrutiny. We have not enough, but we have planners and architects and engineers employed by the counties that go through these plans. We have enforcement officers that have been appointed to just visit sites and ensure that it is being done according to what is required. But then the gap we have in terms of policy and regulations is the enforcement part, because the only reason we have enforcers coming to site is to check that you don't have an approval. And if you don't have an approval, then it becomes a cash cow. The moment they realize you have an approval, then you are no longer a person of interest because you're not a cash cow. So they'll disappear. It is their duty to come and confirm, this is the architectural drawing, was it done that way? Because how else would you explain that a building was approved to be 4 floors and it has been built to the 5th floor and it has not been caught? And it has not been stopped. There needs to be regular enforcement checks on sites, and it should be clear, like after every 3 weeks I'm expecting government officers to come and confirm, is this project on time? Is this project as designed? So the issue we have with regulation is not the absence of it, but the enforcement of it.
That's really interesting. In terms of accountability in construction, we get to see that there are, major concerns, especially when lives are lost due to negligence or, substandard building practices. Have there been any successful prosecutions of individuals or entities held responsible for past building collapses?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, actually, I will not pinpoint the particular cases because they are ongoing cases, but also I have seen architects whose licenses have been suspended, and I have seen contractors who have either been tasked to pay or to face a jail term. I have also seen cases where a client is forced to pay or to serve time with regards to building malpractice. Yes, so well, when a building collapses, there's a lot of online, not really online, mainstream reporting.
Yeah.
But after that, people actually get jailed. Yeah, people get jailed or they are fined, and they pay, and sometimes licenses are suspended. Uh, and for this, now here I will address professionals. I will address professionals because we are the ones who are regulated. The developers are not. The clients are not regulated. So I will address professionals. Anytime you're on a site and you have given your advice and it has not been taken. Yeah, for example, you're an engineer, you specify that the spacing between reinforcement bars should be 200 millimeters and they have spaced them at 300 millimeters. You need to write an instruction to that. And if that is not done, you need to resign. Yes, you need to resign. Anytime as a consultant you give an advice on site that is major with regards to security and safety of the users and it's not being followed, you need to resign, because now the Kenyan industry is in such a way that the clients have a wide variety of choice. Yeah, so no amount of money in fees is worth, because when these things happen, people actually die.
True.
People die. Yeah. Those craftsmen, they die. These are parents. These are breadwinners. So anytime there is such a case, you need to report it as a professional. You need to write to the NCA, because anytime you start supervising a project, you write to the NCA sends you a message and you accept that you're supervising this project. So when it comes to such a point that you are no longer supervising this project for one reason or the other, you need to do an official resignation, because then this will alert our clients that it is important to listen to your profession. So what you are usually supposed to do as a professional is to say that this and this has not happened, and I would like to withdraw my services from this project, and I am happy to hand over this project to the next architect. So you have advised the client that you need to get another architect. Yeah, so if they decide to do something else now, that is up to them. But if we can do this often as consultants, then it's going to spread the word, and we are going to be able, because the only reason buildings collapse is because consultants are excluded. Yeah, consultants are either excluded or they allow their arms to be twisted. There are two. It's not all the time they're excluded. Sometimes they just allow their arms to be twisted, sadly. Yeah.
On practical implementation and future outlooks, why has the adoption of alternative building technologies in Kenya been slow despite the cost-saving potential, and how can these barriers be overcome?
Okay. When you look at alternative building technologies, there's a stakeholder engagement that I was attending, and there was a proposal to have how do we call them, hubs, or rather testing hubs in HUB, testing hubs for these centers, because when you look at bamboo, it has been extensively researched, but by individual entities and at a small scale. Yeah, when you look at interlocking stabilized soil blocks, it has been studied a lot. When you look at rammed earth, it has been studied a lot. When you look at even EPS, it has been studied a lot. But then, how do we test these materials to ensure that they're actually safe, because now we are leaving this to individual manufacturers and individual clients to be able to figure all these things out. So if we could have a central place whereby that is free to access, I'm sure we have this in other more developed countries, that is free to access, and it will encourage anyone with new technology to come in, with new construction technology to come in and test these things. And if then this will be a government body, and then if this is something that is considered useful, then it can be able to be sponsored and to be mainstreamed. What we lack in this space is support. Support from the government in terms of advancing and in terms of testing. But also the other big issue that I have seen with alternative construction methods, apart from the likes of EPS and the likes of precast concrete panels, the structural integrity. Because the materials that are available in the Kenyan context, for example, soil, so interlocking stabilized soil blocks, it is very viable, but at a small scale, because soil is very heavy. So the moment you start going 8 stories high, then it means that you'll have to use a lot of reinforcement to be able to hold that load up there. So they need a lot of re-engineering, and they need a lot of government support in regards to that. Because for you to be able to re-engineer soil so that you can be able to reinforce it and use it for a story building. The problem with housing in Kenya requires storied structures. And the alternative construction materials, most of them that are available, can only do single-storied structures. So it's not solving the housing crisis. It's now being adopted mostly as a leisurely alternative for people who have a choice. So if we can be able to boost these materials in such a way that they can be used up for mass construction, then that will be a win. But as long as there are still things we can choose to, or things we can look at when we are feeling explorative, then it's not going to make an impact.
From a sustainability perspective, how do alternative housing technologies compare to traditional brick and mortar construction in terms of environmental impact?
Okay, now for that question, first of all, we need to understand what sustainability is, because not all alternative construction methods are actually sustainable. Because when you're looking at sustainability in construction, you're looking at constructing buildings for the present generation and still allowing the future generations to be able to construct in the same space without harming the environment presently. So when I talk about sustainable construction practices, I'm looking at construction practices that are easy to reach, that are locally available for the region within which you're constructing. So meaning that if you're constructing in Maasai land, then you should use cow dung, and you should use twigs, and you should use, since it's an oasis, you should use maybe the cow's urine as a means of as water, and that is what the women used to do. When you go to the Nyanza and Western region, we have the trees, we have the trees and banana fronds that can be used to to tie one element to another, and then you use the soil to throw, and then you do a smooth plaster with maybe colored soil from the environment. When you go to Kwale, they have makuti. So comparing these to mainstream construction materials is not possible. It's not possible because they come with different capabilities. The strength we have with mainstream construction materials is that the structural integrity, and it can solve our housing crisis because it can do storage structures, and that is what we need in urban areas. So we can't compare we can't compare, because also these are mainstream construction materials have been widely researched, yeah, in terms of even neatness of finish, and the neatness of finish is relative, because what somebody else considers neat, we have people who like rough, rough and tough. We have people who like a very smooth, finish. We have people who like rustic finishes, yeah. But we can't compare these two aspects, because when you look at mainstream construction, there's a lot of carbon emissions, there's a lot of transportation, and then these materials are imported sometimes from far-flung lands. Yeah, so we can't put them on the same pedestal. But what we can do for the Kenyan setting is to empower locally available materials so that they can, and it's also a lengthy process, and it can also be costly. Yeah, because before you can come up with a KICC made of mud, that is extensive research. But then this is something that can be done once, and then we forget about the housing crisis. But then also there's also the issue of nature of depletion, because not every soil type can do that. So if we start constructing the whole of Kenya with soil, what happens to the agricultural lands? Because now you see you're creating quarries of soil. Right now we have quarries of rocks. Now we're going to be creating quarries of soil. The other material that I would push for is bamboo, because of the way it's easy to plant and harvest, and it matures very fast. So this is something that we can easily take up. And also there has been research that bamboo, with proper research and proper experiments, it can be used for reinforcement. Yeah, and it can at least go higher than the conventional construction materials. Yeah.
So lastly, is there anything that you would want to maybe share with us that you think people should know about? Anything that maybe we've left out, or in terms of architecture?
The one thing that I would just like to stress about is the regulation of developers, really. Regulation of developers, and by let me define a developer for the audience.
Yes.
A developer, the audience usually understands a developer as the contractors. No. A developer is anybody who has a building project, who's planning to build. So you're doing a toilet, you're a developer. You're doing a 2-bedroom house, you're a developer. You're doing a 3-story apartment, you're a developer. And also the people who do multiple units, now the big developers who are serial developers, they develop every other time. Actually, most of the times with those developers, we don't have issues, because these are people who are in the construction sector. They understand the importance of professionals. They understand the importance of regulations and all. The major issue we have in construction is the one-time developers. And those are the people whose houses mostly collapse, because they operate from a point of lack of exposure. Yeah, these are the people who have collapsing structures mostly. So we need to regulate developers, and not just multiple dwelling developers. We need to regulate even that. It has been done in other countries. Yeah, in first world countries, you can't just hire any plumber. Yeah, you can't. So we need to regulate developers in terms of the choosing of their freedom of choice with regards to professionals. Then we also need to regulate that before, for example, if you want to construct a toilet, you need to show proof of funds enough for that. You want to do a bungalow, you need to show proof of funds for that before approval, so that the issue that is in construction is a cost issue. Yeah, the issue in construction is a cost issue mostly. It's a financial issue. Yeah, because why do we have structures collapsing? They were saving. Yeah, why are they hiring professionals who are masquerading to be professionals? They don't have enough money to afford the right professional. So the issue of construction is a financial issue. Yeah, and it needs to be dealt with at the developers. at the point of the developer that you want to do a building worth 140 million. How much is in your account as we speak? Yeah, then that way we can be able to control all these issues in our sector. I do agree that sometimes there has been oversight, yeah, and incompetence, but the biggest issue in construction in Kenya is cost. Yeah, it is cost. The moment we handle the issue of financial ability of the developers, we will not have any issues. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Rose, for gracing us with your presence and your wisdom. It was a pleasure having you here with us on The Voice.
It has been a pleasure. It has been fun. It has been enjoyable. Yeah, it has been a good experience.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward for you to come again and again and again.
Me too. Me too.